Coming up on One Detroit, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson on transparency in city government. Plus, Detroit's Square Pizza is showing up on menus around the country. The story behind a Detroit classic.
I've never felt more hip hop than right here, right now.
It's about grappling and wrestling with big questions.
And we'll take you to rehearsals of Kane Smego's one-man show opening this weekend at Detroit Public Theater. It's an exploration of race, identity, and language. I'm Christy McDonald at Great Lakes Coffee Roasting Company in Midtown, and One Detroit is coming up.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV. The Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and by
Business Leaders for Michigan has 5 priorities to make Michigan a top 10 state. Achieve a balanced budget, cut long-term debt, fix our roads, improve all levels of education, further economic growth, plan for a stronger Michigan. How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
Also brought to you by Ally, Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
And then when it can begin. Hi there, and welcome to One Detroit. I'm Christy McDonald. Hope you're surviving our first big snow of the season and all this cold. We're in Midtown at Great Lakes Coffee. Coming up on the show, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson will join me. We'll talk about transparency problems at City Hall, plus reaction to that 60 Minutes report on investment in Detroit. Also ahead, Detroit's Square Pizza on menus around the country. We will take a look at where it all started. And a new show opening at the Detroit Public Theater this weekend. We'll talk to nationally known slam poet Kane Smego on his one-man show centering on language, race, and culture. That is all coming up on One Detroit. But let's get started. Say hello to our One Detroit contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of American Black Journal. It is January already.
Lord no, it's not. There's leaves on the trees. That proves it's not
That's
January.
What I think is so weird about this entire week of the cold and the snow is I'm not used to seeing them loaded with leaves and snow at the same time.
Terrible. It's just terrible. But, you know, we've been here before. We know what to do, right?
We do know what to do. Unfortunately, it just makes May seem very far
First
away.
snow is always fun because
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's when it's the 10th snow that you're like, okay, I've had enough.
I know, and already the kids have a snow day on the books.
right,
Mine are hopping
right.
around somewhere. Oh, all right, well, let's go ahead and get started. You know, I was, did you guys see the 60 Minutes report
Yes,
on Detroit?
Yeah.
And talking about J.P. Morgan Chase's investment in the city and really where a lot of that money has gone, which I think is, for us here, we kind of have known that story, but for it to hit nationally and to take a look at some of the programs it's really affected, it was a good piece, Nolan.
Yeah, and it is. It does drive home that point that Detroit still is the land of opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of investment opportunity here, a lot of things that haven't been done yet that we still need. There's room for a lot more dollars, a lot more people, a lot more entrepreneurs. You know, if you're somebody out there in a city like Chicago, New York, LA, where it's saturated, you come here, you look around, there's some place to put your money wherever you look.
I think it was interesting they talked about that this would almost be a model for some other cities now that they're taking a look at, and so often maybe Detroit isn't always the model for things.
Well, part of what I think is the model is the way that J.P. Morgan is working with the people who are on the ground here in neighborhoods, in city government. This is not like some outside bank just coming in and saying, well, we can figure out ways to move money around. There's a really thoughtful and intentional sort of purpose behind all this that I think is important, not just for Detroit, but as you point out, for other cities as well that are struggling with this kind of thing. The one thing I would love to see a little more of is JP Morgan taking more responsibility for having caused a lot of the problems that we have here in Detroit. A lot of the blight that we have is about the mortgage crisis that they help fuel with really irresponsible lending practices. They have taken some responsibility for that. That 60-minute story, of course, was not about that, and I didn't expect to see that there. But it's something we should keep in mind, that when banks are left to deal with things on their own, without regulation, they can cause real problems. Here they're doing good, and that's important, but let's not forget the bigger context.
That's a little, without regulation, sort of a fanciful view here. They were overwhelmed with regulation in terms of mandates and pressure from the federal government to make loans, pressure from Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. I mean, this was not an unregulated environment they were working in. It was an overregulated environment.
The regulation that they took away was the one that told them to keep banking separate from investment. And everyone in Congress who voted against that will say to this day that opened the door to the abuses.
Absolutely.
And that's lack of regulation.
But they were under a lot of pressure to make loans in places and to people who couldn't handle the payments.
But the CRA has been in place for decades. What fueled the mortgage crisis was in 2000 or 2001 when Congress removed that regulation of separating, these more conventional investments from
that was a contributor.
A huge contributor.
The government's Fannie Mae program was a huge contributor. A lot of things went into that. But you got a lot of banks here now doing good things in the city. Bank of America has this $1 billion housing program to help people, to help reestablish home ownership in Detroit, which got wiped out in large part during the financial collapse. A lot of people a little wary of getting mortgages again, and now Bank of America got this $1 billion program to really work with people, not only to help them get a mortgage, but to help them make sure they can pay for that mortgage.
Another thing that they highlighted was really the job training programs that they're putting money into, and specifically they looked at Focus Hope and trying to fill a lot of these jobs they're talking about that are coming to the city.
Yeah, well, that's the next step, right? It's not just about housing. It's also about investing in the people here and making sure that they have opportunity. And we're starting to see some real movement on that. Focus Hope is getting back up on its feet after some years struggling. This work they're doing with JP Morgan is part of that. We're seeing all kinds of workforce development being led by the city, being led by some private investors. The Carpenters Union is moving all of its training facilities into the city of Detroit for the first time. Those are things that we desperately need for the people who live here. What
I thought was really interesting while I was watching this piece, though, because it spotlighted a lot of Mike Duggan. And I thought it was very interesting because we're coming off of a period, I think, where people are really questioning transparency in the city government right now and talking about all the investigations surrounding the Make Your Date program, and was there improper push for that nonprofit program coming from the city offices, and also then taking a look at a scathing report that came out about the housing, about the demolition, and the mayor is in front of city council this week asking for the approval. Where do you think we are, Nolan, with how people perceive the Duggan administration and transparency?
Well, there's never any question that Mike Duggan was an able administrator. He's proved that throughout his career. There was also never any question that he was a machine politician and that he did things a certain way, and that he took care of the people who took care of him and made it easier for him to do his job. I think that's what you're seeing play out here. You look at his career when he was in Wayne County, had these same sort of things happen under the old McNamara administration.
But I do think there has to be more accountability. I mean, really what the mayor's saying is, trust me, right? Trust me that these things are okay. Trust me that I will fix the things that went wrong on my own without any sort of consequence being meted out. And I don't think he's earned that trust in this case, right? I mean, I think he's earned a lot of trust in terms of the positive things he's done in the city, but that doesn't give you a license to engage the way he did with this nonprofit, which was bad judgment at the very least, and a conflict of interest that he should have noted and avoided. And then when it blew up, I think he led an effort to have emails destroyed. I mean, I don't think his people just sua sponte, woke up one day and did this. It's his administration that's responsible, and his answer is, well, we'll send them to some training. Well, that's not good enough. There has to be, I think, way more accounting for what went
Do
wrong
you
and
think there
how
has to
it
be
will
more
fix.
consequence in that situation? We're talking specifically about the chief of staff.
His answer to everything, Mike Duggan's answer to everything is, I hold neighborhood meetings every week. I'm in somebody's living room, and nobody
true.
ever mentions the email, the erased emails. Nobody ever mentions Make Your Day. Nobody ever mentions the corporate land speculators.
Arguing that he's doing the job for the citizens of
exactly.
Detroit.
That's what he says to everything. That's not enough of an answer.
It's not.
I mean, you can't, just because you're answering some of the needs in the city, and I think he is, and you're responsive to the citizens, I think he is, doesn't mean you can get away with anything over
So what
here.
do you want to see? What should his response be at this point?
You know, I think there should be a lot more transparency and accountability, and he should start playing by the rules 100% of the time.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, they needed to answer the IG's report about what happened much more directly. Their responses to it were almost Nixonian in the sense of the non-denial denial. Say what happened, say who did what, and be upfront about that. They're also going to now answer, I think, to an attorney general investigation into all of this. We don't know where that will go, but there could be consequences for the people involved there. But the mayor is the person who needs to take the lead in taking responsibility for it, not the people who work for him, who, whatever they did, were doing what the administration decided they needed to do. This is on him. This whole thing is on him. He instigated the whole problem with his own personal behavior. But you know, look, people make mistakes. You just got to come out and say, I screwed this up. Here's how I'm going to fix it.
All right, and we'll have to see how that bond issue for demoing more homes is going to go as well. All right, so when I say Detroit pizza to you guys, what do you think?
Buddy.
Buddies?
I like
One.
Buddies.
Yeah?
I like Buddies, but
People
I like,
fight me about that.
I
We'll
like
talk about other
Hungry
ones.
Howie's. I like Jets. I mean,
Do
this
you?
is, yes.
You
I
don't discriminate
even
on
like
pizza. You don't say
Domino's.
equal opportunity
This is-
pizza eater.
This is the pizza capital of the world, and you know, I push back a
Shields.
little bit against this. Yes, this idea of a Detroit pizza. There's lots of different
Mickey's.
Detroit pizzas.
Right.
I mean, you look at the national chains that are based here, all with a different twist.
Yeah, well, they're talking
local
specifically
pizza's the
about like the
one.
square, the square
Yeah.
pizza, which is now showing up in menus around the country. And we know Buddy's is expanding, and they're supposed to open up a little bit downtown here.
Downtown.
And they're also
Yes.
opening up
So for
outside of
me,
Southeast Michigan.
There's ever only going to be one Buddy's at 6 in Conan. I won't go to the other.
You won't go anywhere
No,
else.
I won't go to the other.
Steve's got weird rules, I think. But we wanted to take a look at where that pizza history started. Take a look.
Everybody, square pizza.
Square. They make a square pizza, and that was weird.
What are these people crazy?
No one even heard of square pizza. It was unheard of.
You fell in love with it. It was great.
But there's purists that will come in and say, nope, cheese and pepperoni, original sauce, that's it.
Detroit style pizza is going to be something when every time you take a bite, you're going to taste every product that's on there.
It became sort of the Detroit style as they refer to it now, but it's actually Sicilian style that originated in Detroit.
Detroiters came back from the war, and some had acquired, well, a more refined palate. Some were stationed in Great Britain, and so they wanted English food.
Fish and chip places like on Gratiot, where we were at, there's 3 or 4 of them in 2 miles.
On the east side, Gus Guerra owned a tavern at 6 Mile and Conan.
It was a gathering place, like Buddy's Rendezvous. Let's rendezvous at Buddy's, because the guys would come in and play cards.
Gus came from San Marino, that little country surrounded by Italy, and he had married into a Sicilian family.
And my father said, you know what, he says, there are really no pizzas here. We got one pizza in the city. So we started making pizza.
Buddy's Rendezvous was at the front end of what soon would become Detroit's pizza craze.
Everybody was throwing up pizzerias.
There was lots of pizza, round pizza, but Buddy's stayed square and thicker. And they used trays that were supposed to hold small car parts or even catch oil dripping from milling machines.
It's a labor-intensive process to do our pizza. It requires multiple stretchings where you take a round pizza, you take the dough, you flip it, twist it, and it's ready to go. With us, it's got to sit and proof. That part of it didn't maybe appeal to a lot of pizza people at the time.
Buddy's added one more ingredient, too, brick cheese. Brick cheese from Wisconsin, another place with a lot of Poles and Germans, just like over on Detroit's east side.
The pepperoni is underneath the cheese, which is unique. What it's known for is the blend of the cheese and the flavors of the sauce with the dough, creating this crunchy pizza that has got a great taste.
Yep, business was going good all right, but it wasn't going quite so well for Gus.
My father left Buddy's in 1953. There was a little internal problem between the partners, which can happen in any relationship.
Two guys, both named Jimmy, wanted Buddy's, and so Gus sold it to him.
He promised Buddy's he'd move it at least 2 miles away, and he found a little farmhouse in East Detroit. It was called Cloverleaf Farm when he bought it.
While Gus made his pizza north of 8 Mile Road on Gratiot back in Detroit, these women, led by a Sicilian named Connie Pincinato, kept faithful to the original Buddy's recipe. Wesley Pecula started as a dishwasher there when he was just in high school.
Whatever Connie tells you, you do. Whatever Savina tells you, you do. And Anna, the one on the left, you could see the size of her arm. So trust me, I listen to her more than anybody.
By the 1960s, Buddy's had become an East Side institution. Sports teams that played at nearby Jane Field held pizza parties there. Sometimes, hey, they even lined up around the block just waiting for seats.
Let's put it this way. In 1970, Buddy's was the story in that area. They had other places. I mean, they had other pizzerias on the east side. There was many of them, but none of them had the reputation that Buddy's had.
My parents went there around 1969, and my parents were just loved the atmosphere.
1970 was the year that really changed everything. Buddy's was sold again to Bill and Shirley Jacobs this time, who arrived just in time for the great pizza contest created by the Detroit News.
We had a good pizza, and we thought we'd have a good shot at it.
In a city full of round pizzas, it was between the Cloverleaf and Buddy's for the squares, but only one of them would get to compete.
My father called about it, my brother called about it, and they told him that you're excluded, you can't enter the contest because you're not inside Detroit city limits.
As the omen was, Buddy's was picked as the best pizza place in the city.
Buddy's took first place, and it hurt us, I know that, but there was nothing we could do about it.
By the late 70s, Buddy's was adding another location out in Warren.
Every story got better by the day, so at some point it became legendary.
In 1980, Ronald Reagan came to town for the Republican National Convention. It was big news, of course, and Buddy's decided to feed square pizza to all those hungry reporters down at Cobo Hall, and they liked it.
Every news person you could mention, every anchor, signed that Buddy's book. Said better than New York. I mean, we had Ted Koppel, this knocks anything out of New York. I mean, we had so many of those quotes.
Now Buddy's is spread out all over Metro Detroit.
Maybe now it's a brand. It's the test of time.
How much time? Well, almost 70 years. And Cloverleaf is still going strong, too. And then there's Louie's. Now, we've got to mention Louie's. That's Louie's Pizza without an E. He made it originally at Buddy's, and then he made it at Shields, and, well, he decided to do it all by himself right here in Hazel Park nearly 40 years ago. Detroit Square Pizza is good, of course, but we haven't talked about Detroit's iconic round pizzas. Well, maybe more on that next time.
And finally, this weekend is the opening of a new one-man show at the Detroit Public Theater. It's called The Temples of Lung and Air, and it shares the life experiences of hip-hop, spoken word, and slam poet Kane Smego. We had a chance to watch rehearsal and talk to Kane about how he created this show. It's about his upbringing and how he questions his connections with race and culture.
My name is Kane Smego, and I'm the writer-performer of Temples of Lung and Air.
In the States, hip-hop was born as liberation music, a soundtrack for the urban struggle birthed by DJ Kool Herc.
The story in the play is about my upbringing and growing up with parents who are white, who were split up, and my mother's partner, who was like a second father figure to me, who was black, and my grandparents who lived with my dad and my older brother, who were white. and kind of growing up between two worlds and two conflicting narratives. So that these kind of questions were always on my mind, even when I was very young and didn't understand the context as much as I did as I got older. Finding a way to talk about those things in a more focused, kind of deliberate way through the arts has been part of my career. But obviously, creating something in 90 minutes that's kind of a cohesive story, that was the big challenge. This is a new world for me, so I want to be pushed. I want to develop new skills. I want to grow. And that's where kind of the acting comes in, and being to fully embody those kind of things. And Joseph was instrumental in kind of pushing those limits.
I'm interested sort of in what's underneath our experience in our culture, and where conflicts and resistance and lack of connection lies, and what performance can do to sort of change that conversation. Performers like Kane opened those doors in beautiful ways. He brings such a wonderful toolbox that we get to play with, that it makes the dynamics of the piece worthy of like a one-person show where things keep on shifting and changing, and just when you think you know what he can do something else.
So thinking about, all right, now I have 90 minutes to move between these different kind of mediums, to communicate in every way that I possibly can as a person, the ideas and the emotions that I want to get across.
He does this poem of borders, which makes us think about all types of borders and all types of ways in this moment of, and then this new moment of anti-immigration that we're experiencing, so that it just sort of explodes the notion of that one idea.
I've never felt more hip-hop than right here, right now.
It's about grappling and wrestling with big questions around race, around the way that we learn the language of race, around culture, cultural appropriation, authenticity. And it's also, there are entertaining parts of it too. Like there's gonna be some funny moments, some exciting moments. There's some double time rap in there. Like there's a little bit of everything. So I hope to take people on a journey that gets them to reflect on their own kind of complex relationship to race and identity in America.
I think there's ways in which we don't think about ethnicity, race, background, ideas of co-option, where art comes from, who gets to own art. I just think all of those questions are really interesting. I think explaining white privilege to white people is very complicated. They don't quite understand it. I think that gets explored in interesting ways.
Proving that we ain't spinning different records, just remixing the same song, and I've been wrong.
And I think, again, sort of being surprised by how you're taken into an idea that you don't think about and then start thinking about it opens up a whole bunch of opportunities for discussion, change, transformation, or just a little adjustment just a little adjustment. Just maybe I'll think twice about that idea.
I'd like to try that in the transition with the slide.
When I perform, my favorite kind of audience is a diverse audience because I can connect on those different levels. And so it's always fun to have folks who are hip hop heads in the room who get it, right? Who are gonna get all the references, who understand the medium and gonna vibe with it, right? That's the most fun. They're the most lively and the most responsive audience.
Gold ropes and fat laces and back brace for cats in the rat race, and I may have been sold down, spun round, pawned off, commodified, Spotify, chopped, screwed, auto-tuned.
I also feel like, white folks, especially white men, are like the audience that I feel most responsible for reaching. I feel like I have a responsibility to connect with those folks and to bring up the kind of hard questions that the piece asks about my relationship to the culture and about, I think, white folks' relationship to racialism in the United States and the history. So all that to say, I love mixed audiences because I want them to have that experience together with me, to ask those hard questions and to also enjoy themselves, and to hopefully let it be a seed for a continued dialogue that happens outside of the show. When it's all over and the lights go off, I hope that those conversations will spark new ones.
Ain't I always been right on time? Ain't I been chameleon medicine, whatever you needed me to be to heal all your brethren, to patch a gaping wound the size of a crack house or a trailer park festering of a bleeding city, trying desperately to clout?
The Temples of Langenair runs from November 16th to December 8th. And thanks so much to Kane. It's always a treat to hear from the writer and the performer about something so personal. You can check out more about the show on DetroitPBS.org. And that is going to do it for us on One Detroit. Thanks so much to Great Lakes Coffee Roasting Company in Midtown. Stay warm. I will see you next Thursday.
Show your support for local independent journalism on Detroit Public TV by joining us as a sustainer at dptv.org/OneDetroit. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV. The Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and by
Business Leaders for Michigan has 5 priorities to make Michigan a top 10 state. Achieve a balanced budget, cut long-term debt, fix our roads, improve all levels of education, further economic growth, plan for a stronger Michigan. How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television.
Also brought to you by Ally, Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.